So let's talk about some of the crazy and absurd legislation that is being produced by our elected officials in Washington State, my home state. So today I'm going to talk about Senate Bill 5599, which has been widely recognized as allowing secret state-sanctioned kidnapping in order to mutilate young children. I mean, in a legislative session that's filled with absurdity and insanity, it appears like this one appears likely to take the prize this cycle for just plain crazy, absurd legislation. Now, first, I know what you're thinking. There's just no way that you could find a group of politicians so out of touch or insane that they would really vote for something this crazy. Well, if you say this, you clearly don't know the current crop of Democratic Party legislators in Washington State, because they love doing this to children, apparently, and this is just the most recent in a series of self-immolating efforts by this crew to see just how much damage that they can potentially do to a beautiful state like Washington State. I love Washington. I'm a fifth-generation Washingtonian myself, and I'm not leaving. But as beautiful and wonderful as our state is, right now we have some of the most politically ugly and insane politicians that I think you can find anywhere in America, outside of perhaps California, Chicago, or maybe New York City. Now, before I go into the latest level of just state-sponsored crazy from our legislators, Bob Ferguson and, of course, Governor Inslee, I want to remind you to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and then share this video with others. You can also leave me a comment below. I try to respond to most of the comments that I receive. I'm always interested in what you have to say. It is important for you to text, email, or share this video on social media because particularly this video will be shadow banned, and that might be the only way that people are going to find it. That's if you share them. This doesn't cost you anything, and you might gain some friends by sharing this kind of stuff far and wide. So now back to the Washington State Legislature, our Attorney General Bob Ferguson, and our worthless Governor Jay Inslee. I need to give you a trigger warning first because these guys are far more insane than I'm representing in this video. I'm really kind of tamping it down here. So one of the problems that's long identified by involved citizens throughout history is that if you stop paying attention to politics, you're going to eventually be ruled by self-destructive crazy people. And this year's political session in Washington certainly proves this warning to be very true today. So before I get into the nuttiness of this recent piece of absurd legislation, I want to point out to you that any bill passed by any group of clowns in the legislature can just as easily be rescinded or eliminated by future legislators. If we elect a majority of sane, uncorrupted adults, and they take over the asylum being currently run by the inmates in Olympia, this is just not very hard to reverse. Now, historically, kind of the madness of crowds, even small and corrupt cadres of people like the goofs the Democrat Party is appointed for now, they don't tend to last too long. I mean, normal people, a majority of whom do live in our state, they're going to stop surfing TikTok and binge-watching Netflix long enough to realize that the crazies are in charge in Olympia right now, and I believe that they're going to reject this. It has happened before, and it will happen again in the near future. However, there's a lot of damage that these guys can do if we refuse to hold them accountable. So SB 5599 is just one of many recent examples. I'll try to get to some of these in other videos, but this bill in particular appears to be some kind of brainchild of a variety of special leftist interests, and they convinced a bunch of Democratic Party lawmakers that this one right here was the hill that they apparently should die on. Now remember, legislators really never write the bills that you see today. They just jump on the bandwagon and sign on to them. So when people say there's no difference between Republicans and Democrats, they are lying to you right now and ignoring obvious differences that have been highlighted by this bill at least, where the chasm between the two sides is just so wide. There is no common ground. I mean, this is 100% owned, endorsed, and sponsored by Democratic Party members and 100% opposed by Republicans. So don't get me wrong. Sometimes the Republicans, they go spaghetti-spined and they flail around in confusion or appear easily swayed by special interest lobbying. But in this case, the partisan difference is distinct and it's real. So I've linked to a variety of articles, the original bill, a video testimony down below, and just a lot of other sources. Even though there has been a lot of stupid legislation this cycle, and I'd like to get to some more of them, this bill just seems to stand out to the rest of the country, which has been generating really a lot of attention that the Washington State Democratic Party seems to crave. At least they crave the attention. I'm not sure they're craving the type they're getting now. This bill is essentially what it does is it allows kids who run away from home or want to run away from home to be secretly housed by state-sponsored organizations who can basically then convince that child to get an abortion, cut off their breasts or genitalia, or commit other permanent, irreversible surgical actions basically upon these young children without the consent or the knowledge of their parents or family. The state, under this bill, gets to keep it completely secret from them. Now, the Democrats appear to love this idea, and they're just enthused about doing this to children. And I honestly don't get it. And I'm sure most of you watching this video don't get it either. I mean, who can understand the mind of people who think that this is actually a good idea? Now, the bill's nickname in Olympia is the Elect Jim Walsh for Governor bill, which implies that even the Democrats know that they have jumped the shark. But if you've ever studied the madness of crowds, this is a great modern-day case study in kind of one of these scenarios. And yes, Attorney General Bob Ferguson, the same guy who tried and got shot down on his effort to launch this statewide Ministry of Truth, that guy, he's jumping for joy to do this to kids. Right now, Washington State Governor Jay Inslee is also enthusiastic about the damage that he can do to future generations. Now, to be fair, and I try to be, I'm doubtful that most of the rank-and-file Democrats kind of pushing this bill really understand just how insane it is. They have their talking points, and that's all they know. But like the Borg in Star Trek, thinking for themselves is really no longer allowed in that party. So I'm not sure that enough of them can be spooked into running away yet. The Republicans have been unusually strong in opposition to this craziness, but the Republican legislature in both houses really suffers greatly right now from just a lack of good communicators. Even the solid people in Olympia who care about this issue are often not super capable spokespersons for the opposition. Representative Jim Walsh is probably one of the most vocal and capable, and many other good folk are opposing this craziness, but the Democrats do seem intent right now to make themselves the butt of a variety of Babylon Bee skits and videos moving forward. It's very hard to parody these people. They are that crazy. So let's put this in context as well right now. Despite a massively bloated state budget, the Democrat majority will squander every taxpayer penny and grift most of the cash to their friends in the public sector unions or grant grifting operations. The Washington State Public Education Establishment, which is the largest part of the state budget, that's very bloated, it's expanding and producing pretty much the worst public education the state's ever managed to burden the next generation with. The test scores right now are ugly, outcomes are not good, and our legislators, they're basically too ignorant themselves to even understand what's happening. So the obvious illegality of the so-called assault weapons ban, which was another genius bill that was just passed, and other efforts to deny Washingtonians the right to defend or protect themselves, these are clearly likely to be thrown out in federal court, just like several other cases lately. And I think the Democrats actually know it. They just don't really care because they want the cash that anti-freedom and anti-gun billionaires like Nick Hanauer and Michael Bloomberg that can launder into the Democrats' political campaigns and kind of get out the vote efforts. So the bureaucracy now has been escalating pay increases and expanding the job opportunities for the upper echelon of senior leadership. And this grifting always needs more cash, which is really, as I've talked about before, this is the real fight in Olympia. It's grifting for more of those tax dollars. So there's lots of dumb, unworkable, clearly destructive ideas that come out of the fevered swamps of Olympia. And oftentimes these ideas founder and they fail when they come into contact with any attempt to actually implement them. Reality is a problem for these guys, and so is math. So wokesters, they can deny that these things exist if they want, and they can certainly get crazy politicians to support them. But the ability to actually implement them becomes problematic, and I believe that it tends to create very long delays in the implementation process. So never doubt the friction as well that the bloated bureaucracy and the whole corruption of the grant grifting world that tends to create in this process. So just because a bill passes doesn't mean it's immediately being imposed on you. It tends to drag on for quite a while. Now, it's too easy and lazy to believe that you can just run away again and then try somewhere else. You're going to fail, and it doesn't matter if you go to Texas or Wyoming or Idaho. I've discussed this in previous videos, but you can't really escape the political confrontation. It's happening right now, and it really does need to happen now, sooner rather than later. We have to defeat the weirdos and these insane people in government right now. They need to be exposed. We need to share the truth far and wide right now, not just in your little echo chamber of friends, but to everyone that you can find in your community and nearby. I mean, only the really weirdest of the crazies in the Democratic Party will think that this SB 5599 is a good idea. Some of the more Machiavellian organizers will be happy if they can use this to scare people out of the state because they know that they're at risk of losing power, but they want to leave or to give up. This is what they want to do, is convince you to leave or give up because they're desperate to consolidate power right now. So we need to widely expose this insanity right this minute, aggressively. Apathy is the path to oblivion. And it's something that we need to resist. Being apathetic is not going to get you anywhere. So let me close with just a few suggestions. And partly these are reminders to you of what you can do to start having an impact right now with your family, with your neighbors, and in your community. And first, I think that it's very important for us, especially considering the nature of this bill, support your family and friends right now. Make sure that your kids are doing well. Make sure that your nieces, your nephews, and your grandkids are doing well as well. I mean, you want to avoid anything happening to them while we deal with this very short-term but very crazy time period. Now, secondly, realize that most people around you have no idea what is happening. So share the truth with them. They need to know just how insane the politicians that they've elected, particularly in King County, they need to know just how out of touch and crazy that these guys really are. So give them information that they're not hearing from state-sponsored and censored traditional media. Now finally, there's clearly some type of inflection point coming. The grifting, the insanity, the crime wave, and whatever else is impacting the momentum of change right now, which seems to be speeding up. It's super likely to be leading to kind of a massive change of some kind. It's a lot of people wake up when something like this tends to happen. And it's up to you and I, both of us, to step in and to help them when that change occurs. So plan for success and push to make it happen. It won't happen if you stay home and cry in your beer or prepare for the apocalypse. You have to engage. And I suggest actually that we make our family, our neighbors, and our community far better places because of it. But of course, as I've said before, you have to show up because the future does belong to those who show up.